The space station floated in the darkness between three distant suns. It was called Helio 7, and it was the largest military training center in the entire galaxy. Every year, the best soldiers from dozens of alien species came here to learn, to compete, and to prove themselves worthy of serving in the Galactic Coalition forces. Corporal Una Park stood at the viewing window of the transport ship as it approached the massive station. She was 26 years old, with black hair tied back in a simple ponytail and calm dark eyes that rarely showed emotion. She was not tall. She was not muscular. She looked like someone you would pass on a street in Seoul without a second glance. But Una was not ordinary. She was the only human selected for the Advanced Weapons Qualification program this year. Out of 8 billion humans on Earth, and millions more scattered across colony worlds, the military had chosen her. She did not know exactly why. She only knew that when her commanding officer handed her the transfer orders. He had smiled in a strange way and said, "Show them what we can do. Park. Show them what humans are made of." The transport docked with a gentle vibration. Una picked up her 2 bags. One contained her uniform and personal items. The other was long and rectangular. And she carried it with more care than anything else she owned. Inside the station, everything was big. The corridors were wide enough for creatures 3 times her size. The ceilings rose high above her head. The air smelled clean but strange. Filtered through systems designed to keep dozens of different species comfortable, a young man in a technician's uniform was waiting for her at the check-in point. He was human, with a friendly face and nervous eyes. His name tag said Doyon, Corporal Park. He asked, "I'm Doyon. I work in the simulation department. They asked me to help you get settled since, well, there aren't many of us here." Una nodded. "Thank you. How many humans are on the station?" "Including you, 11. But you're the only one in the combat training program. The rest of us are technicians, translators, that sort of thing." He glanced at her long bag. "Is that your weapon?" "Yes. The armory can store it for you. They have excellent security systems. I will keep it with me." Doyon looked like he wanted to say something more, but he simply nodded and led her through the station. The dormitory assigned to her was small but comfortable. After Doyon left, Una sat on her bed and opened the long bag. Inside was a rifle. It was not shiny or new. The metal was dark with age and use. The wooden stock was worn smooth by countless hands over many years. This rifle had belonged to her grandfather. Before that, it had belonged to his father. It was old technology by Earth standards, ancient by galactic standards. It had no computer, no targeting system, no artificial intelligence to help guide bullets to their targets. It was just metal, wood, and precision engineering from an age when humans still fought their wars on a single planet. Una ran her fingers along the barrel. Tomorrow, she would walk into a room full of aliens with weapons that could think faster than any human brain. They would look at her rifle and laugh. She was counting on it the next morning. All 37 cadets in the Advanced Weapons program gathered in the main armory. Una had arrived early. The room was already crowded with beings of all shapes and sizes. The Velthari were the most noticeable. They stood over 2 meters tall and had 4 arms each. Their skin was gray-blue, and their eyes were solid black. They moved with the confidence of a species that had dominated their homeworld through strength and had conquered 3 others before joining the coalition. A group of cricks huddled together near the wall. They were insectoid creatures with hard shells and many legs. Their weapons were built into their armor. Integrated systems that responded to their thoughts. The Irani were perhaps the strangest. They appeared to be made of living crystal, their bodies glowing with soft inner light. They communicated through pulses of color and sound that the translation devices turned into words. There were others too. Tall and short, scaled and furred, some with too many eyes and some with none at all. Una was the smallest person in the room by a significant margin. She found an empty table in the back corner and began to unpack her equipment. The laughter started within minutes. "Look at this," a Velthari cadet said loudly. His name was Torvik, and he seemed to be the leader of his group. He pointed at Una's rifle with 3 of his 4 arms. The human brought a museum piece. Other cadets turned to look. Some made sounds that their translators could not fully convert, but were clearly amusement. "Is that made of wood?" a Crix asked, its mandibles clicking. "I have only seen such material in historical databases. Perhaps she will throw it at the targets," Torvik suggested, and his companions laughed loudly. Why, UNA did not respond. She continued her work, attaching the worn bipod to the barrel, checking the manual scope, loading the ammunition she had brought from Earth. Each bullet had been made by hand by specialists who still practiced the old craft. Across the room, Doyon watched from his position near the holographic displays. He felt embarrassed for her, and a little angry at the aliens for their cruelty. But he also felt something else: curiosity. Because Yuna did not look embarrassed at all. Her hands were steady, and her expression was calm. Meanwhile, the other cadets showed off their weapons. The Velthari had plasma repeaters that could fire 300 rounds per minute with perfect accuracy. The Crix had integrated targeting systems that could track 100 targets at once. The Irani had gravity pulse rifles that did not even need ammunition. Every weapon was connected to advanced computers. Every system was designed to remove the possibility of human error. Point the weapon in the general direction of your target, and the technology would do the rest. Senior Instructor Kelroth entered the room, and everyone fell silent. He was an Irani, but older and larger than the cadets of his species. His crystal body was marked with dark lines, scars from battles fought long before most of the cadets were born. He had served in 3 interstellar conflicts and had trained warriors from over 100 worlds. His glowing eyes moved across the room, noting each cadet and their equipment. When his gaze reached Yuna and her ancient rifle, he paused, but his expression revealed nothing. "Welcome to Advanced Weapons Qualification," he said, his voice resonating through the translator. "Over the next 6 weeks, you will be tested in every aspect of combat marksmanship: speed, accuracy, tactical thinking, adaptation. Only those who prove themselves worthy will earn certification." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "Your equipment has been registered. Your skills will be measured. Your weaknesses will be exposed." Another pause. "Begin your preparations. Testing starts in 1 hour." As the cadets returned to their work, Kelroth walked slowly through the room. He stopped beside each table, examining weapons, asking questions. When he reached Yuna's position in the back corner, he stood in silence for a long moment. "Manual operation," he observed. "Analog sighting. No electronic assistance?" "Yes, Instructor. This design is approximately 200 Earth years old." "The design is old," Yuna agreed. "This specific rifle is 83 years old." Something flickered in Kelroth's crystalline form. Interest, perhaps, or doubt. "Why?" he asked simply. Yuna met his gaze without fear. "Because I was trained to use it, Instructor. And because my grandfather told me to never trust a weapon that thinks for itself." Kelroth made a sound that might have been laughter, or might have been something else entirely. He moved on without another word. But Yuna noticed that he looked back at her twice more before leaving the armory. The first test was a suppression drill. The cadets entered a large simulation chamber one by one. Inside, holographic technology created a perfect copy of an urban battlefield. Buildings rose on all sides. Streets twisted and turned. And from every shadow, enemy targets appeared. 40 targets. 3 minutes. That was the challenge. The Velthari cadets went first, as they had demanded. Torvik completed the drill in 72 seconds. His plasma repeater tracked and destroyed targets almost before they fully appeared. The weapons computer predicted where enemies would emerge and fired before Torvik's own eyes could see them. 40 targets eliminated, the system announced. Time: 72 seconds. 0 misses. Torvik walked out of the chamber with all 4 arms raised in victory. His companions made sounds of celebration. The Crix were nearly as fast. Their integrated systems worked with the speed of thought, sending precise shots into every target within moments of its appearance. The fastest Crix finished in 68 seconds. The Irani took a different approach. Their gravity pulse rifles did not fire bullets at all. Instead, they sent waves of compressed force that knocked targets apart in clusters. One Irani cadet eliminated. 40 targets in 53 seconds. By destroying 5 at once with each shot, species after species entered the chamber. Species after species emerged with impressive times. The scoreboard above the observation deck filled with numbers. No one took longer than 100 seconds. Then it was Yuna's turn. She walked into the chamber, carrying her rifle. The door closed behind her with a soft sound. The holographic city shimmered into existence around her. "Begin," the system said. The first target appeared on a rooftop to her left. Yuna turned, aimed through her manual scope, and fired. The target exploded. A second target appeared in a window. She shifted, aimed, fired. Another hit, but she was slow. While she was eliminating one target, 2 more would appear elsewhere. While she was reloading her manual magazine, 3 targets would pop up across the street. Her rifle held only 10 rounds before she needed to reload. The alien weapons never needed to reload at all. She moved through the simulated streets with careful precision. Her shots were accurate. Every bullet hit its mark. But the targets appeared faster than she could eliminate them. The clock continued counting upward. In the observation deck, the other cadets watched with a mixture of amusement and boredom. Doyan stood near the back, his hands gripping the railing tightly. "This is painful to watch," Torvik said loudly. "Someone should tell her to quit. The humans should not have been allowed into this program." Akrix agreed. "It is an embarrassment for all of us." Yuna could not hear them. She was focused entirely on the task. Aim, fire, move, reload. Aim, fire, move, reload. She did not rush. She did not panic. She simply worked through the problem 1 bullet at a time. The final target fell with 18 seconds remaining. 40 targets eliminated, the system announced. Time: 2 minutes, 47 seconds. 0 misses. Yuna walked out of the chamber with the same calm expression she had worn going in. She did not look at the scoreboard. She did not react to the whispers and clicking sounds of the alien cadets. Doyan met her near the exit. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "I am fine." I mean, you hit everything." "Not a single miss." "Missing was never the problem," Yuna said. "Speed was the problem. Speed was always going to be the problem." She walked away before he could respond. That night, Yuna sat alone in the observation deck that looked out at the stars. The station rotated slowly, and the view changed gradually from empty darkness to distant galaxies and back again. Doyan found her there after his shift ended. He hesitated at the door, unsure if she wanted company, but she glanced at him and nodded slightly, so he walked over and stood beside her. "The cafeteria serves food from 60 different worlds," he said. "I tried something from the Krix homeworld yesterday. It was still moving." Yuna almost smiled. "I brought my own supplies. The other humans on the station want to meet you. They're proud that one of us made it into the combat program, even if..." He stopped himself. "Even if I am failing," Yuna finished. "It is okay. You can say it. You're not failing. You haven't failed a single test. You've passed every one. Passing is not enough. Passing in last place means nothing." Doyan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Can I ask you something? Why don't you use better equipment? The Academy provides weapons to cadets who need them. You could request something with targeting assistance at least." Yuna did not answer right away. She stared at the stars, and Doyan thought she might not respond at all. Then she said, "My grandfather was a soldier. Not in space. On Earth, in the mountains of Korea, he fought in a war when he was very young. He carried a rifle much like mine." "What war?" "It doesn't matter now. It was a long time ago, before humans knew there was anyone else in the universe. But my grandfather learned something in those mountains. He learned that machines can fail. Power can run out. Computers can break." She turned to look at Doyan directly. 3 generations of my family have trained with rifles like this one. No computers. No assistance. Just eyes, hands, and patience. My grandfather taught my mother. My mother taught me. They made me practice until I could shoot in perfect darkness, in wind and rain, in heat and cold. But why? Do-yeon asked. We have technology now. Better technology than any of these aliens. Yuna smiled, and there was something old in her eyes. Something that seemed to belong to a different age, because someday the technology will fail. And when it does, those who remember the old ways will be the only ones left who can fight. She looked back at the stars. I did not come here to win the early tests, Do-yeon. I came here because Human High Command received information about this program. They know what the Academy saves for the final examination. They sent me specifically because of what I can do. Do-yeon felt a chill run down his spine. What are you talking about? What's the final exam? I cannot tell you. I only know what my commanders told me. They said that when the time comes, the aliens will understand why humanity still trains snipers the old way.
Ow.
She stood up and gathered her things. Get some sleep, Do-yeon, and don't worry about the scoreboard. The scores that matter haven't been counted yet. She left him standing alone at the window, staring at the stars and wondering what she meant. The next 2 weeks followed the same pattern. Each test measured something different. Speed of target acquisition, accuracy at various ranges, tactical positioning under fire, shooting while moving. Shooting from unstable positions, Yuna passed every test, but she was always near the bottom of the rankings. Her scores were acceptable, but never impressive. The alien cadets stopped making fun of her simply because she was too boring to mock. She was background noise, a forgettable human who would graduate with minimum marks and disappear into some backwater posting. Instructor. Kelroth said nothing about her performance. He graded her tests without comment and moved on. But sometimes, when Yuna was practicing alone in the shooting range, she would notice that the observation deck was not empty. A crystalline figure would be standing there, watching silently. And when she looked up, Kelroth would turn and walk away without a word. Something was happening. Something was building toward a moment that Yuna understood, but the others did not. She continued to practice. She continued to wait. And every night, she cleaned her grandfather's rifle with the care of a woman preparing for war. During the 3rd week, the other cadets began to forget that Yuna existed. She attended every training session, completed every exercise, and returned to her quarters without speaking to anyone. She ate alone. She studied alone. She became invisible. But Do-yeon noticed something strange. He worked late shifts in the simulation department, monitoring the station's holographic systems and maintaining the training software. The job was mostly boring, but it gave him access to information that others did not have. He could see when training facilities were being used and by whom. Every night, between the hours of 2 and 5 in the morning station time, someone was accessing the abandoned cargo sector. The area had been shut down years ago when the station expanded in a different direction. Now it was just 3 kilometers of dark corridors, empty containers, and forgotten storage rooms. The access logs showed that the same person entered and left. Every night, Corporal Yuna Park. Curiosity got the better of him. One night, Do-yeon finished his shift early and made his way to the cargo sector. The lights had been disconnected long ago. He had to use a small flashlight to find his way through the maze of abandoned containers. He found her in a vast, empty chamber that might once have been a loading bay. She had set up a small target at the far end. In the darkness, he could barely see it. It looked like it was at least 1,000 meters away. Maybe more. Yuna lay on the floor in a shooting position he did not recognize. Her body was completely still. Her breathing was so slow that he could not see her chest moving at all. She stared through her manual scope at the distant target, making tiny adjustments with her fingers. She stayed like that for a very long time. Minutes passed. Do-yeon began to think she had fallen asleep. Then she fired. The sound echoed through the empty chamber like thunder. Do-yeon jumped in surprise. Far away, the target made a small sound as the bullet struck it perfectly in the center. Yuna stood up slowly, working the stiffness out of her limbs. She did not seem surprised to see Do-yeon standing in the shadows. "You followed me," she said. It was not a question. "I saw the access logs. I was curious." Stepped forward into the dim light. "What are you doing out here?" "Practicing." "Practicing what?" None of the tests require this kind of shooting. The longest range in the qualification program is 500 meters. Una walked toward her target. Do-yeon followed. When they reached it, he saw that the bullet had passed through the exact center of a circle, no bigger than his thumb. In the daytime tests, I use equipment that the Academy can track, Una said. They record my scores, my techniques, my capabilities. The aliens see a slow human with old technology who barely passes her examinations. She removed the target and replaced it with a fresh one. But out here, in the dark, I practice what I really came here to do. She began walking back to her shooting position. Do-yeon hurried to keep up. You keep talking about why you came here, he said. About what human command knows. But you never explain. What is the final exam? Why is it so important? Una stopped walking. For a moment, she seemed to be deciding something. The Galactic Coalition has used this academy for over 200 years, she said. Every species that joins must send their best soldiers here to train. It is a test of capability, but it is also a test of something else. A test of character, of adaptability. Okay, but what does that have to do with the final exam? The final exam has been the same for 200 years, Do-yeon. The Academy pretends that it changes each time, but the core challenge is always the same. The instructors design a test that removes the biggest advantage of the current top species. Whatever technology or ability makes one group dominant, the final exam takes it away. Do-yeon felt understanding beginning to form in his mind. And this year, the dominant species are Valkyrie Crix, Arani. All of them depend on advanced targeting systems. Their weapons think for them. They have forgotten, or never learned, how to shoot without computer assistance. Una smiled grimly. Humanity has been part of the Coalition for 40 years. We have watched, we have learned. We have gathered information about every final exam ever given, and we notice the pattern. So the final exam will disable electronic targeting systems. Yes, and then none of the aliens will be able to hit anything. Correct. Do-yeon stared at her. But you can. You've been training for exactly this scenario your entire life. Una did not respond. She simply returned to her shooting position and lay down on the cold floor. Her breathing slowed. Her body became still. Go back to your quarters, Do-yeon, she said without looking at him. And do not tell anyone what you have seen. He left, but he did not sleep that night. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the small human woman who was preparing for a battle that no one else knew was coming. The fourth week brought new challenges. Tests became more complex. Cadets were required to shoot from moving platforms. Through atmospheric distortions and in environments with shifting gravity, Una continued to rank near the bottom. But Do-yeon noticed something that others did not. She was studying her competitors. During each test, when she was not actively shooting, her eyes moved constantly. She watched how the Valkyrie held their weapons. She noted how the Crix responded when their targeting systems encountered interference. She observed the Arani when the gravity shifted unexpectedly. She was looking for weaknesses, learning their limitations, understanding exactly how helpless they would be when their technology failed. Instructor. Kelroth called Una into his office at the end of the fourth week. Do-yeon heard about it from another technician who had been repairing equipment nearby. What did he want? Do-yeon asked Una later that day. He asked me why I was still here, she replied. He said that most cadets with my scores would have withdrawn by now to avoid embarrassment. He wanted to know why I stayed. What did you tell him? I told him that I came here to learn. That every test, even a failed test, teaches something valuable. That my people believe in finishing what we start. Did he believe you? Una's expression flickered. For just a moment, Do-yeon saw doubt in her eyes. I do not know. Kelroth is difficult to read. But he said something strange before I left. He said that in all his years of teaching, he had never seen a cadet so calm about failure. He said that calm either comes from not caring or from knowing something others do not. That sounds like he suspects something. Perhaps. Perhaps he simply wanted to see how I would react. She shook her head. It does not matter. The final exam is in 2 weeks. Whatever Kelroth suspects, he cannot change what is coming. The 5th week was rest and preparation. No tests, no official training. Cadets were encouraged to practice on their own and prepare themselves mentally for the final challenge. Most of the aliens spent their time fine-tuning their equipment. They ran diagnostics on their targeting systems. They updated their weapon software, practiced with their technology at maximum capability. Una spent her time in the abandoned cargo sector, lying on cold floors in perfect darkness, sending bullets into distant targets that no electronic system would ever be able to see. She practiced breath control. She practiced waiting. She practiced shooting in conditions that seemed impossible, and every night. She grew more certain that she was ready for what was coming. The night before the final exam, Doyen found her on the observation deck again. She was not looking at the stars this time. She was looking at her hands. "Are you nervous?" he asked. "No," she paused. "Yes, a little. Tomorrow will determine whether 40 years of preparation were worth anything. Whether my family's traditions have any value in a galaxy of thinking machines. What if you're wrong? What if the final exam is something different?" Una looked at him, and in her eyes he saw something that might have been fear, but also something stronger. Determination. Faith. "Then I will fail," she said simply. "And I will go home knowing that I did everything I could. But I am not wrong, Doyen. I know it in my bones. Tomorrow, the machines will go dark, and when they do, I will be ready." She stood up and walked away into the quiet corridors of the station. Doyen remained at the window, watching the stars turn slowly past, and waited for morning to come. The morning of the final exam arrived with unusual ceremony. Doyen had never seen the station so busy. Officers from a dozen species crowded the observation decks. Dignitaries who had traveled from distant worlds filled the upper galleries. Recording devices floated through the air, capturing everything for broadcasts that would reach billions of viewers across the galaxy. This was not just an examination, this was an event. All 37 cadets gathered in the primary staging area. They wore their formal uniforms and carried their weapons. The air was thick with tension and excitement. Una stood in the back row, as she always did. Her grandfather's rifle hung from her shoulder. Her face showed nothing. Torvik stood at the front with the other Velthari. He held his plasma repeater with obvious pride. His armor gleamed with fresh polish. He looked like a warrior from a propaganda video, strong and confident and certain of victory. "Today is our day," he said to his companions, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The galaxy will see what Velthari soldiers can do." The Cricks clicked in agreement. Irani pulsed with bright colors of anticipation. Everyone expected glory. Instructor Kelroth entered the staging area, and the room fell silent. His crystal body seemed darker today, more serious. The scars on his form stood out like cracks in ancient stone. "Cadets of the Advanced Weapons Qualification Program," he began, his voice resonating through every translator in the room. "You have completed 6 weeks of intensive training. You have been tested in speed, accuracy, tactical positioning, and adaptability. Your scores have been recorded. Your capabilities have been measured." He paused, letting his glowing eyes move across the assembled soldiers. "But scores are not everything. The Galactic Coalition does not need soldiers who can perform well in controlled conditions. We need warriors who can adapt, who can survive, who can fight when every advantage has been stripped away." A murmur ran through the crowd. Something in Kelroth's tone suggested that the final exam would not be what they expected. "Your final challenge is this," Kelroth continued. "Single target elimination. You will have unlimited time. You may use any equipment you have brought." A holographic display activated behind him, showing the setup. The target was a small sensor drone, about the size of a human fist, positioned 4,200 meters away. Between the shooting platform and the target were 3 atmospheric barriers that would alter bullet trajectory. 2 magnetic interference fields would affect any metal projectile, and the entire shooting corridor passed through a gravity manipulation zone that shifted constantly, changing direction every few seconds. It was an impossible shot by any normal standard, but the cadets had technology that made the impossible routine. Their smart weapons would calculate all the variables, just for all the interference, and guide their bullets perfectly to the target. Torvik laughed. This is the great challenge. My rifle can make this shot in its sleep. The other alien cadets made sounds of agreement. Some looked almost disappointed. They'd expected something harder. Yuna did not react. She was staring at the display with an intensity that Doyen had never seen before. Her eyes were moving, calculating, measuring. Could almost see the mathematics happening in her mind. There is one additional condition, Kelroth said. The room went quiet. The display flickered. And new text appeared in bright red letters. That every translator could read clearly. All electronic targeting systems will be disabled during this examination. For 3 long seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Then chaos erupted. Torvik's forearms dropped to his sides. His face twisted with disbelief. What? That is impossible. Our weapons cannot function without targeting systems. This is unfair, a crick shrieked. We were not trained for this. Our equipment was not designed for this. The Irani flashed angry colors. You cannot change the rules at the final moment. This is discrimination against technologically advanced species. Voices rose from every corner of the room. Alien cadets shouted at each other and at Kelroth. Some demanded explanations. Others demanded that the test be changed. A few simply stood in stunned silence, staring at their suddenly useless weapons. In the back row, Yuna began to move. Slowly, calmly, she walked forward through the crowd. Cadets parted around her without really noticing. Too caught up in their own panic, Doyen watched from the technician's station near the wall. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst from his chest. This was the moment. This was what Yuna had been waiting for. Kelroth raised one crystalline appendage, and his voice boomed through the room with such force that everyone fell silent. The rules have not changed, he said. This condition has been part of the final exam for 200 years. Every species that has attended this academy has faced this challenge. The technology changes. The advantages shift, but the test remains the same. He looked at the cadets with ancient, unforgiving eyes. The coalition does not want soldiers who can only fight when everything works perfectly. We need warriors who can adapt when systems fail, who can survive when power runs out, who can kill when the machines go dark. His gaze swept the room, settling briefly on each cadet before moving on. Any cadet who cannot attempt this challenge without electronic assistance may withdraw now, without penalty. Your scores from the previous tests will be recorded, and you will graduate with standard certification. For a moment, no one moved. Then Torvik stepped forward, his face twisted with barely controlled rage. How are we supposed to hit a target at 4,200 meters through gravity distortion without targeting systems? It cannot be done. The calculations are too complex. No brain can process all the variables fast enough. Kelroth's voice dropped lower. It became almost soft, almost reverent. That is not entirely true. He turned to look at the back of the room. At the empty space where Yuna had been standing, the other cadets followed his gaze, confused. Where is the human? Someone asked. Doyen pointed toward the shooting platform. There. Every eye in the room turned. Yuna had already set up her position. She had unfolded her worn bipod, settled her grandfather's rifle into place, and lay down on the cold metal platform. Her body was perfectly still. Her breathing was slow and controlled. She stared through her manual scope at a target that was little more than a speck in the distance. She had begun working while everyone else was still arguing. Kelrath walked toward the platform. The other cadets followed in a daze, their useless weapons hanging at their sides. The observation galleries fell silent. Millions of viewers across the galaxy held their breath. Corporal Park Kelrath said, "You are prepared to attempt this challenge?" Yuna did not look up from her scope. "Yes, Instructor. Your weapon has no electronic components, no targeting assistance, no computational support, correct? You will calculate all variables manually. The atmospheric refraction, the magnetic interference, the shifting gravity. I will." A Crix cadet made a harsh sound. "This is ridiculous. No biological brain can perform those calculations in real time. She will miss by 100 meters." Yuna's voice was calm and steady. My brain is not performing the calculations in real time. It performed them last night and the night before, and every night for the past 6 weeks. I have measured this course. I have studied the patterns. I know where my bullet needs to go. She paused. I just need to release it. Kelroth stepped back from the platform. He looked at the assembled cadets, at the dignitaries in the galleries, at the recording devices floating overhead. Then he spoke the words that would echo across 12 star systems. The shooting range is clear. Only snipers may fire. The alien cadets looked at each other. They looked at their weapons. They looked at the impossible target 4,200 meters away, one by one. They stepped back, because they finally understood. They had never been trained to be snipers. They had been trained to aim. They had been trained to activate systems. They had been trained to let machines do the work. But shooting without computers, killing with only their own eyes and hands and instincts, that was something they had never learned. Something their species had stopped teaching generations ago. Only one cadet remained on the shooting platform, Corporal Yuna Park, the human woman, with the ancient rifle, the sniper. The shooting platform was cold. Yuna felt the chill seeping through her uniform into her bones, but she did not move. She had trained her body to ignore discomfort. Cold was just information. Pain was just noise. The only thing that mattered was the target. Through her scope, the sensor drone was a tiny shape in the distance. Between her and the target, the air shimmered with atmospheric barriers. Invisible magnetic fields pulled at her perception. The gravity corridor flickered and shifted, changing direction every few seconds in patterns. She had memorized through weeks of careful observation. 30-6 cadets had withdrawn. They stood behind her now, silent, watching. Their weapons were useless weight in their hands. All their training, all their technology, all their confidence had been stripped away in a single moment. Doyan moved to the front of the crowd. He wanted to be close. He wanted to see this happen. His hands were shaking, but Yuna's hands were perfectly still. The observation galleries were packed. Dignitaries from every species in the coalition leaned forward in their seats. Recording devices zoomed in on the small human woman lying on the platform. Millions of viewers across the galaxy watched in silence. Instructor Kelroth stood beside the platform, his crystalline form pulsing with soft light. He had seen warriors from 100 worlds attempt this challenge. He had watched most of them fail, but he had never seen anyone attempt it like this. You may fire when ready, he said. Yuna did not acknowledge the instruction. She was already deep in concentration, her mind moving through calculations that no computer was helping her perform. The atmospheric barriers would slow her bullet and bend it slightly to the right. She adjusted her aim. The magnetic fields would pull the metal projectile downward. She compensated. The gravity corridor was currently pushing left. In 3 seconds, it would shift to pulling right. In 7 seconds, it would push down. In 11 seconds, it would return to neutral for exactly 2 seconds before the cycle repeated. She had to fire at the exact moment that would let the gravity changes work for her instead of against her. Too early, and the bullet would be pushed off course. Too late, and the same thing would happen. She had one shot. The ammunition restriction was absolute. One bullet. One chance. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. She was 6 years old again, lying in the snow on a mountain in Korea. The cold was biting through her jacket. Her fingers were numb. And her grandfather was kneeling beside her, his voice patient and warm. The bullet is already there, Yuna. It is already in the target. You are not making it go there. You are simply releasing it. Ach! She had not understood then. She understood now. She breathed in slowly. Filling her lungs with the processed air of the space station, she breathed out. Feeling her heartbeat slow to a steady rhythm, in, out, the gallery was silent. The cadets behind her were silent. The entire galaxy seemed to be holding its breath. Yuna made one final adjustment. 1 millimeter to the left, a tiny movement that would change everything, and then she stopped thinking. Her finger squeezed the trigger. It's not because she decided to squeeze it, but because the moment was right. The bullet was ready. The target was waiting. She simply released what was already there. The rifle fired. The sound was different from the plasma weapons and gravity rifles that the other cadets used. It was older somehow, sharper, more real. The sound of metal and gunpowder and human engineering from an age. Before starships, the bullet left the barrel at 870 meters per second. It entered the first atmospheric barrier and slowed slightly, bending to the right just as Yuna had calculated. It passed through the magnetic field and dropped slightly. The invisible force pulling at the metal. It entered the gravity corridor at exactly the moment when the forces began to shift. The corridor pushed the bullet right, then pulled it left, then pushed it down. But the timing was perfect. Each change in gravity corrected for the previous one, bouncing the bullet along a path that looked random but was actually carefully designed. 7 seconds passed, an eternity of flight. The bullet struck the sensor drone exactly in the center. The tiny target exploded in a flash of light. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence stretched out across the shooting range, across the observation galleries, across every screen showing the broadcast throughout the galaxy. Then Instructor Kelrath's voice broke the silence. Time, 4.7 seconds. 0 electronic assistance. Perfect elimination. The words seemed to hang in the air. Nobody knew how to respond. Torvik was staring at the distant explosion, his black eyes wide with disbelief. His forearms hung limp at his sides. The weapon he had been so proud of was now just dead weight. The cricks had gone completely still. Their clicking sounds silenced. The Irani's light had dimmed to almost nothing, pulsing with colors that the translators could not interpret. And then, from somewhere in the observation gallery, someone began to applaud. It was a human, one of the 11 humans who worked on the station. Then another joined. Then another. The applause spread. Slowly at first, then faster. Species who had never clapped before tried it for the first time. Others made their own sounds of appreciation. The cricks clicked in rhythm. The Irani pulsed with bright colors. Yuna stood up slowly. Her legs were stiff from lying still for so long. Her shoulders ached. Her eyes were tired from staring through the scope, but she was smiling. Kelrath walked to stand in front of her. He was tall enough that she had to look up to meet his glowing eyes. "I've trained warriors from over 100 worlds," he said, his voice soft enough that only she could hear. "I have seen every weapon technology ever created. I've watched soldiers rely on machines that think faster than any brain can process." He paused. "But I have never seen a shot like that. Not in 200 years of teaching. Tell me, Corporal Park, how did humanity preserve this skill when every other species abandoned it?" Yuna thought of her grandfather. She thought of her mother. She thought of the generations of soldiers who had trained in mountains and deserts and forests, learning to shoot without assistance, learning to fight without advantages. Because we remember what it means to be the underdog, Instructor. We were not the strongest species. We were not the fastest. We had no natural weapons, no special abilities. We survived because we refused to give up. Because we kept practicing skills that others thought were obsolete. She looked at the alien cadets who had mocked her rifle 6 weeks ago. They would not meet her eyes. And because we never stopped preparing for the day when the machines go dark, Kelrath made a sound that might have been laughter, or might have been respect. "The Galactic Coalition has much to learn from your people. Corporal," he turned to address the crowd, "the final examination is complete. Corporal Yuna Park has demonstrated capabilities that no other cadet in this program could match. She is hereby awarded maximum certification and the rank of Specialist First Class." The applause returned louder than before. Doyen pushed through the crowd to reach her. He was grinning so widely that his face hurt. "You did it," he said. "You actually did it." Yuna nodded. She was tired now. The adrenaline was fading, and she could feel the weight of weeks of secret training catching up with her. "I told you the scores that matter had not been counted yet." That night, there was a celebration in the station's main hall. Species that had never socialized together shared food and drinks and stories. Torvik approached Yuna at one point, all 4 arms held low in a gesture of submission. I laughed at your weapon, he said. I called it an antique. I was wrong. Yuna accepted his apology with a simple nod. 6 months later, the Galactic Coalition Military Academy introduced a new mandatory course for all cadets. Regardless of species, fundamentals of analog marksmanship. Based on human methodology, the course was not easy. Many species struggled to learn skills that their ancestors had abandoned centuries ago. But they learned, because the Coalition had finally understood what humanity had always known. Technology is a tool, but the warrior is the weapon. The first lecture was taught by the new senior instructor of the program. She was a small human woman with black hair and calm dark eyes. She carried an ancient rifle that had belonged to her. Grandfather Captain Yuna Park stood before her students and spoke. Words that would be quoted across 12 star systems for generations too. Come, your weapons are impressive, she said. Your technology is advanced, but none of it matters if you cannot fight without it. The machines will fail someday. The power will run out. The computers will break. She held up her rifle. The same weapon that had been laughed at in this very room less than a year ago. When that day comes, the soldiers who survive will be the ones who remember the old ways. The ones who never stopped practicing. The ones who know that a weapon is just metal and plastic and circuits. She looked at her students with eyes that held the wisdom of generations. But a warrior is made of something else entirely. The lesson began, and across the galaxy. Species who had forgotten how to fight, without their machines started to remember, because a small human woman had shown them that sometimes the oldest skills are the most valuable ones, and sometimes the ones who are laughed at are the ones who will save everyone in the end.